In recent years, China's Type 055 destroyer has become a centerpiece of Chinese naval propaganda and Western military analysis. At approximately 10,000 tons displacement, armed with 112 vertical launch system cells, equipped with advanced radar systems and featuring a stealthy superstructure design, the Type 055 looks every bit the modern, capable warship. Chinese state media celebrates it as proof that China has achieved world-class naval capability. Some Western analysts have noted that the U.S. Navy reportedly studied the Type 055 design, suggesting American recognition of its sophistication. The specifications sound impressive: long-range air defense missiles, anti-ship weapons, anti-submarine capabilities, a comprehensive sensor suite, and command facilities that enable the ship to serve as the air defense core of carrier strike groups. China is building these destroyers at a remarkable pace. 8 are operational, and 8 or more are under construction, representing one of the most aggressive destroyer production programs in modern naval history. But Chinese state media itself, specifically CCTV footage covering a joint air defense assessment exercise, showed Type 055 crew members admitting they face significant challenges during exercises against People's Liberation Army Air Force aircraft. Despite what CCTV framed as outstanding results, the crew acknowledged that simulated enemy aircraft posed problems they struggled to handle. This is state television broadcasting what amounts to an admission that China's premier destroyer, the ship positioned as air defense guardian of carrier strike groups, has difficulty conducting air defense operations against friendly aircraft in controlled training exercises. Not against sophisticated American threats employing advanced electronic warfare and tactics refined through decades of combat experience, but against their own Air Force in scripted training scenarios. Today we are going to examine what is actually happening with the Type 055 program, why declaring ships combat ready in 7 to 9 months reveals fundamental problems, and what this means for China's claim to have a world-class navy. By the end, you will understand that impressive hardware means nothing without properly trained crews, and China is building destroyers faster than they can train sailors to operate them effectively. Let us start with what the Type 055 is and why it looks impressive on paper, because understanding the capabilities reveals why training matters so much. The Type 055 is a large guided missile destroyer designed for air defense, anti-surface warfare, anti-submarine warfare, and fleet command functions. Its 112 vertical launch system cells can carry various missile types: long-range surface-to-air missiles for fleet air defense, anti-ship cruise missiles, land attack cruise missiles, and anti-submarine rockets. The radar systems include advanced phased array radars for detecting and tracking multiple targets simultaneously. In terms of size and armament, the Type 055 compares favorably to American Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and Ticonderoga-class cruisers. Some specifications suggest advantages in certain areas: more vertical launch system cells than most Burke variants, an integrated mast design that reduces radar cross-section, and a modern propulsion system. On paper, the Type 055 represents genuine technological achievement. The design appears sound, the construction quality looks acceptable in photos and videos. The system's integration, getting all the radars, weapons, sensors, and computers to work together, reportedly functions. As a piece of hardware, the Type 055 accomplishes what Chinese naval architects set out to create: a large modern destroyer with comprehensive capabilities. But warships are not just hardware. They are complex systems operated by hundreds of sailors who must train extensively to employ the ship's capabilities effectively. A Type 055 requires approximately 280 to 310 crew members, each with specific roles and responsibilities. Air defense operations alone involve dozens of personnel, including radar operators who track targets, weapons controllers who manage missiles, combat information center staff who coordinate responses, communications specialists who relay information, and damage control teams ready to respond to combat damage. Training these sailors to work together effectively under stress takes time. U.S. Navy ships typically spend 18 to 24 months or more in training and workup before being declared fully combat ready. This includes individual training for each sailor, team training for each watch section and division, department-level integration training, and finally whole ship exercises that test all systems working together under realistic conditions. China is declaring Type 055 destroyers. Combat ready in 7 to 9 months, not years, months. Now let's examine the specific timeline admissions that reveal the problem. The 8th Type 055 destroyer Xianyang was commissioned in April 2023. By January 2024, just 9 months later, it was declared combat ready and assigned to operational duties. The 7th destroyer, Zunyi, achieved combat readiness in just 7 months from commissioning. These timelines are remarkably short for modern warships with complex systems. Chinese media frames this as evidence of efficiency and excellent training programs. The reality is that achieving combat readiness in 7 to 9 months means crews receive condensed training that does not allow the time necessary to develop genuine proficiency with complex systems. Consider what must happen between commissioning and combat readiness. The crew must learn the ship's systems, not just how to operate them in ideal conditions, but how to troubleshoot problems, conduct maintenance, and adapt when equipment does not work perfectly. They must practice damage control procedures until responses become automatic. They must conduct live fire exercises with the weapon systems. They must integrate with other ships and aircraft in coordinated operations. All of this requires extensive time at sea conducting realistic training. U.S. Navy ships typically spend many months in various training phases. A basic phase checks individual systems. An intermediate phase integrates departments. An advanced phase conducts complex scenarios. Finally, fleet exercises pit the ship against realistic adversaries. The entire process takes well over a year because experience shows that rushing training produces crews who can perform scripted procedures but struggle when situations deviate from what they have practiced. China's 7 to 9 month timeline does not allow this depth of training. Chinese naval leadership has explicitly stated goals of shortening training periods and achieving combat readiness faster. This sounds like efficiency, but it actually means crews are being declared ready before they have received training that Western navies consider necessary for safe, effective operations. The China Central television footage showing crew members admitting significant challenges during air defense exercises validates concerns about inadequate training. If they struggle against friendly aircraft in controlled scenarios designed for training, they are not ready for combat against adversaries actively trying to defeat their defenses. Let's examine what proper air defense training requires and why the CCTV admission is so damning. Modern naval air defense is extraordinarily complex. Threats can come from multiple directions simultaneously: anti-ship missiles flying at sea, skimming altitude, aircraft attacking from various angles, and coordinated attacks timed to overwhelm defenses. Defending effectively requires radar operators detecting and tracking all threats, combat systems prioritizing targets, weapons controllers assigning missiles, and all of this happening in seconds while under stress. Training for this requires extensive practice against realistic threats. U.S. Navy ships conduct air defense exercises where aircraft simulate enemy attack profiles. Drones mimic anti-ship missiles, and electronic warfare systems create the challenging environment ships would face in actual combat. These exercises reveal problems that need correction before ships face real threats. The Type 055 crew, admitting significant challenges in exercises against People's Liberation Army Air Force aircraft, suggests they are struggling with scenarios far less complex than actual combat. Friendly aircraft in training exercises do not employ the full spectrum of electronic warfare, coordinated tactics, and deceptive maneuvers that real adversaries would use. If the crew has difficulty handling friendly training scenarios, they are not prepared for actual threats. Chinese state media framed the admission within a narrative of outstanding results and a valuable learning experience. But the fact that crew members acknowledge struggles publicly, even in state media that tries to spin everything positively, suggests the problems were significant enough that they could not be completely hidden. When Chinese media admits difficulties, you can reasonably assume actual performance was worse than acknowledged. This is not a problem unique to one ship or one crew. If China is declaring all Type 055 destroyers combat-ready after 7 to 9 months of training, they all face similar limitations. The entire class is being rushed into service with inadequately trained crews because political goals demand declaring readiness faster than training can actually achieve it. Now let's talk about the manning problem, because building ships faster than you can train crews creates compounding issues. China has 8 Type 055 destroyers operational, with 8 or more under construction. At approximately 300 crew members per ship, that is 2,400 sailors for ships already operational, and more than 2,400 needed for ships under construction. Where do these sailors come from? And how do they gain the experience necessary to operate complex warships effectively? The United States Navy faces persistent manning challenges despite having decades of institutional experience and extensive training infrastructure. Finding, training, and retaining skilled sailors is a constant struggle, even for an established Navy with mature systems. China is trying to man a rapidly expanding fleet while simultaneously developing the training programs and institutional knowledge needed to produce competent sailors. Senior petty officers and experienced sailors are particularly critical. These are the personnel who actually make ships work. They train junior sailors, troubleshoot problems, ensure maintenance gets done correctly, and provide institutional knowledge about how systems really function versus what manuals say. Building this cadre of experienced personnel takes years of steady operations where knowledge accumulates and gets passed down. China is building ships so fast that experienced personnel must be spread thin across a growing fleet. When a new Type 055 commissions, it needs experienced chiefs and petty officers to form the core leadership that trains and supervises junior sailors. But those experienced sailors must come from other ships, reducing those ships' experience levels. As the fleet expands, experience gets diluted across more platforms. This is exactly the problem discussed with China's carrier program. Dividing limited expertise across a growing fleet means each ship has fewer experienced personnel. For destroyers, it is the same issue on a slightly smaller scale, but repeated across many more ships since China is building destroyers much faster than carriers. The 7 to 9 month readiness timelines compound this problem. If ships deploy before crews are fully trained, they do not gain the operational experience that builds genuine proficiency. Sailors rotate through assignments learning partial skill sets rather than developing deep expertise. The institutional knowledge that mature navies rely on never fully develops because no one stays in position long enough to accumulate it. Now we will examine what United States Navy training timelines look like and why they take so much longer than China's approach. A Navy destroyer typically spends 18 to 24 months in various training phases after commissioning, before being declared fully combat ready. This training pipeline generally includes several distinct phases: basic phase, individual systems testing, crew familiarization, safety certification. Intermediate phase, department-level integration, Damage control training, coordinated operations. Advanced phase, warfare area training, air defense, anti-submarine, anti-surface, complex scenarios, coordinated operations with other ships and aircraft. Final evaluation, comprehensive testing of all capabilities under realistic conditions. Throughout this process, the ship conducts numerous exercises at sea, often totaling 6 months or more of actual underway time, where the crew practices under realistic conditions. Live fire exercises test weapon systems. Damage control drills ensure the crew can handle casualties. Navigation exercises verify safe ship handling. Integration exercises with other ships and aircraft ensure the destroyer can operate as part of a larger force. This emphasis on realistic training reflects hard experience. Complex warships require time and repetition to achieve genuine readiness. Shortcutting the process produces crews who can operate systems in ideal conditions but struggle when faced with unexpected situations, equipment failures, or tactics they have not explicitly trained against. The U.S. Navy learned these lessons through decades of operations, accidents, and, unfortunately, some combat losses that revealed training deficiencies. Modern U.S. Navy training incorporates lessons from the USS Stark being hit by Iraqi Exocet missiles in 1987, the USS Cole being attacked in 2000, and the USS Fitzgerald and the USS John S. McCain collisions in 2017. Each incident revealed training gaps that subsequent programs sought to address. China's 7 to 9 month timeline suggests they either believe they can achieve the same training outcomes in a third of the time, or they are accepting lower readiness standards for political reasons. Neither explanation is reassuring. Either they are overconfident about what can be accomplished quickly, or they are prioritizing propaganda over actual capability. Now let us consider what this means for actual combat capability versus propaganda claims. Chinese state media presents the Type 055 as the air defense corps of carrier strike groups, the ship that protects the fleet from aerial threats. That is a legitimate role for capable destroyers with proper training. But air defense requires split-second decision-making, flawless coordination between dozens of crew members, reliable equipment operation, and extensive practice against realistic threats. A Type 055 with 7 to 9 months of training and a crew admitting significant challenges in exercises against friendly aircraft is not ready to defend a carrier strike group against a determined adversary. American or Japanese forces would employ electronic warfare, coordinated attacks, deception tactics, and speeds of attack specifically designed to overwhelm defenders. If the Type 055 struggles against friendly training scenarios, it would be catastrophically vulnerable to professional adversaries. This does not mean the Type 055 is useless. Against less sophisticated opponents without advanced anti-ship missiles or coordinated attack capabilities, a Type 055 might perform acceptably. The hardware is capable even if the crew is not fully trained. But against peer adversaries, which is precisely who the ship is supposedly designed to counter, the training deficiencies create serious vulnerabilities. The propaganda versus reality gap is enormous. Chinese media shows Type 055 ships as symbols of naval power, conducting impressive-looking exercises and projecting strength. But the CCTV admission about training struggles reveals that actual capability does not match appearance. Ships can be declared combat-ready for political purposes while not actually being ready for combat against competent adversaries. Let's be clear about what this analysis does not mean, because accuracy requires acknowledging what China has accomplished. This does not mean the Type 055 design is fundamentally flawed or that China has built worthless ships. The hardware appears sound, the design is reasonable, and the ships represent genuine technological achievement. Building modern, capable destroyers is difficult, and China deserves credit for the vessels themselves. This does not mean Chinese sailors are incompetent or that training is completely absent. China has training programs and sailors receive instruction. The issue is insufficient time and experience to develop the proficiency that complex warships require, not a complete lack of training. Training matters. This also does not mean China cannot eventually develop properly trained crews. Given time, accumulated experience, and willingness to acknowledge and address training shortcomings, China could build the institutional knowledge necessary for professional naval operations. The question is whether their system permits the honest assessment and patient development required. Institutional change is necessary. But it does mean that declaring ships combat ready in 7 to 9 months when Western navies require 18 to 24 plus months represents either unrealistic optimism or political pressure overriding operational requirements. It means the impressive hardware is being undermined by inadequate crew training, and it means the Type 055 fleet, despite looking formidable in photos and propaganda, has serious readiness questions that no amount of additional ships can solve. So what is the bottom line on the Type 055 and what it reveals about China's naval expansion? China has built impressive-looking destroyers with modern systems, reasonable design, and capabilities that look good on paper. The Type 055 represents genuine achievement in shipbuilding and systems integration. Building 8 operational ships with more under construction demonstrates industrial capacity and commitment to naval expansion. Chinese state television, CCTV, showed crew members admitting significant challenges during air defense exercises against friendly aircraft, not sophisticated adversaries but their own air force in training scenarios. Ships are being declared combat ready in 7 to 9 months when the U.S. Navy training cycle takes 18 to 24 plus months. Because experience shows complex warships require that much time to achieve genuine proficiency. Challenges were publicly acknowledged. China is building destroyers faster than it can train crews to operate them effectively. The shortening training periods that Chinese media celebrates actually means sailors are being declared ready before they have received the training that Western navies consider necessary. At 300 sailors per ship with 16 ships operational or under construction, that is 4,800 positions that must be filled with experienced sailors who do not yet exist in sufficient numbers. Impressive hardware alone does not equal genuine combat capability. Rushed training and political pressure can undermine systems and create operational risk. The CCTV admission underscores those risks, and the lesson is clear. Quantity of ships is not the same as combat readiness. The Type 055 isn't the problem. It is the 280 sailors aboard each ship who have had 7 to 9 months to learn systems that require years of training to master. World-class hardware operated by third-world training timelines produces second-rate capability dressed in first-rate appearance. Chinese propaganda emphasizes quantity. 8 operational, 8 building, 16 total, but quantity of inadequately trained ships does not equal capability. One properly trained destroyer is worth more operationally than 3 ships with crews who struggle in basic training exercises. Building faster does not help if you cannot train the crews to actually employ what you have built. The admission on Chinese state television was not dramatic. It was a subtle acknowledgement of challenges buried in a narrative about outstanding results. But it revealed a fundamental truth. China is building impressive-looking warships faster than it can develop the institutional knowledge and crew expertise to operate them effectively. The gap between appearance and capability, between propaganda and readiness, remains enormous, and no amount of additional construction solves it. Don't forget to subscribe for more analysis exposing the gaps between impressive hardware and actual operational capability. Thanks for watching.